Your snake knows you're there. It knows your smell. It knows your footsteps. It knows the difference between you and a stranger. But here's what no one tells you. It also knows itself. Not the way you know yourself in a mirror. Snakes are almost blind by your standards, but there is something happening inside the mind of a snake that scientists spent decades insisting was impossible. In 2024, researchers at Wilfrid Laurier University ran a test that had never been attempted on a reptile before, and when the results came back, they had to read them twice. A snake recognized itself, not visually, not the way a chimpanzee does in a mirror, in a way that is stranger, more ancient, and in some ways more impressive. What they discovered reaches far beyond one snake in one laboratory. It reaches into questions about consciousness, identity, and what it actually means to know that you exist. Part 1. The world inside the tongue. Before we get to the experiment, you need to understand how a snake experiences the world, because the way a snake perceives reality is so different from yours that it changes everything about what the 2024 discovery actually means. You see the world. A snake tastes it. Every time a snake flicks its tongue, it is not doing something random. It is not nervous. It is not threatening you. It is reading. The tongue collects molecules, particles floating in the air, resting on surfaces, drifting from living bodies. Hundreds of pieces of invisible chemical information with every single flick. But the tongue itself cannot process any of it. The tongue is just the collector. The real organ is hidden deeper, inside the roof of the mouth. Two small chambers called the vomeronasal organ or Jacobson's organ, each one lined with sensory cells that decode chemical signals and send them directly to the brain. When the tongue retracts, its two tips deposit the collected molecules into these two chambers separately. Here is where it becomes remarkable. Because the tongue is forked and because each tip feeds its own separate chamber, the snake's brain receives two independent chemical readings simultaneously, one from the left side, one from the right. This is stereo smell. The same reason you have two ears is the reason the snake has a forked tongue. Two inputs, one brain. Instant directional information. A snake knows not just what is in its environment, it knows exactly where. It builds an invisible chemical map of everything around it with every flick. Prey, predators, mates, territory, and, as 2024 confirmed, itself. Part 2. The test that changed everything. For most of scientific history, self-recognition was considered a privilege of the intelligent few. Chimpanzees, dolphins, elephants, some birds, certain fish, controversially. The test was always the same, the mirror test. Place an animal in front of a mirror with a mark on its face it cannot see directly. If the animal notices the mark and investigates it, the conclusion is that it recognized itself. Reptiles were never included. The assumption was clear, and it was almost never questioned. Snakes don't have that kind of inner life. They were machines. Instinct only, no self, no awareness. Then Troy Freiberger, Noah Miller, and Morgan Skinner decided to ask the question differently. Their insight was simple, but it changed everything. The mirror test is designed for visual animals. Snakes are not visual animals. Testing a snake's self-recognition with a mirror is like testing a blind person's self-awareness by showing them their own photograph. The test itself was wrong, not the animal, so they redesigned it. Instead of mirrors, they used scent, cotton pads soaked in specific chemical signals. 5 different conditions, each one carefully controlled. The snake's own unaltered scent, the snake's own scent with a foreign chemical added, a mark, the foreign chemical mark alone, the scent of an unknown snake, the scent of an unknown snake with the same mark added. Then they watched. Specifically, they measured tongue flick duration. When a snake is truly interested in a scent, when something about it demands attention, it performs long, slow tongue flicks. Extended investigation, the chemical equivalent of stopping and staring. The results were clear. When Gartersnakes were presented with their own scent marked with a foreign chemical, when their scent was altered, they responded with significantly longer tongue flick investigation than in any other condition. Not to any altered scent, not to unfamiliar snakes, not to the foreign chemical alone. Only when their own scent was the one that it changed, they noticed that something about themselves was different. Part 3. The why the garter snake and not the ball python. The researchers tested 2 species. The results were not the same. Garter snakes passed. Ball pythons did not. This difference is not random. It tells us something profound about why self-recognition exists at all. Garter snakes are intensely social animals. In the Interlake region of Manitoba, Canada, tens of thousands of garter snakes share underground dens through winter. Thousands of bodies, thousands of individual chemical signatures, all pressed together in the same space for months. In that environment, knowing the difference between your own scent and someone else's is not a luxury. It is survival. It is navigation. It is identity. To live successfully in that density, to find your way out in spring, to recognize your own trail, to know where you end and another snake begins, you need a sense of self. Evolution gave garter snakes one. Ball pythons are different, semi-arboreal, largely solitary. They don't share dens. They don't need to track themselves through thousands of others. The self-recognition ability never evolved because the pressure to develop it never existed. This is one of the most important parts of the 2024 findings. Self-recognition may not be a fixed cognitive milestone that some species have and others don't. It may be something that evolves in response to specific ecological challenges. Where social complexity demands self-awareness, self-awareness appears.
The garter snake didn't pass the test by accident. It passed because its life required it. Part 4. What this actually means. Now comes the question that no researcher has fully answered yet. What does it mean for a snake to recognize itself? The lead researcher, Noah Miller, was careful. There have been claims, he said, that passing self-recognition tests means that one is conscious or self-aware or has a concept of self. I think that may certainly be true for a lot of animals, but I don't think that passing this test alone is strong evidence of that. The range of possible explanations is wide. At one end, the snake simply detects a chemical mismatch. Its own scent is changed. Something about the signal is unexpected. It investigates. No deep self-awareness required. At the other end, the snake has some form of chemical self-model, an internal representation of what it smells like, and when that representation is violated, something in its mind registers, this is me, and something about me is wrong. Both are extraordinary. The first would make snakes more sophisticated chemical processors than anyone gave them credit for. The second would place them inside a category of minds that scientists spend centuries insisting they could never enter. What we know for certain is this: the garter snake knows when its own scent has been altered. It does not show the same reaction to any other scent, not a stranger, not a familiar companion, only itself. At some level, simple or complex, ancient or evolved, this animal has a self to recognize. Gordon Schuett, an ecologist at Georgia State University, offered a cautious response to the study. No matter how careful these authors were, the biggest hurdle will be convincing some scientists that the findings mean anything beyond a rudimentary response to stimuli. That debate will continue. But consider what we thought we knew 30 years ago. Fish couldn't recognize themselves. Then a cleaner wrasse passed the mirror test. Birds couldn't recognize themselves. Then magpies did. Reptiles couldn't recognize themselves. Then a garter snake in a Canadian laboratory spent longer investigating the scent of a version of itself that had changed. The boundary keeps moving. Every time we design a test that fits the animal instead of fitting our assumptions, the animal surprises us. Outro. The snake flicking its tongue in front of you is not doing something meaningless. It is reading the world, building a map, processing a reality you cannot sense. And somewhere in that map, according to the science, is a chemical signature that belongs only to it. A self, encoded in scent. Invisible, ancient, real. We have spent centuries deciding which animals are complex enough to deserve our curiosity. The garter snake just reminded us that the animals were never the ones with a limited imagination. If this changed the way you see reptiles, you are exactly who Scale Whisper is made for. Subscribe, because the next discovery is stranger than this one.